Denzel Boston has the size, strength, and ball skills to be a quality starting prototypical X receiver in the NFL.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian Parson. That's Keith Sanchez. And on today's episode, we're breaking down the scouting report for star wide receiver for the Washington Huskies, Denzel Boston. We're going to talk about his grade. We're going to explain our grades for you, give you some NFL comps that fit, and if we have time, give some NFL teams that can fit his skill set, get into the concerns with his game going into the NFL. But let's kick this thing off with his pros. Denzel Boston came into the combine listed at 6'4", 212 pounds, 9 3/4 on the hands, 32-inch arms. He jumped 35 at the combine. I think he jumped 37 at his pro day. So like to see it match the tape a little bit more. Keith, as I always ask, what's that A trait / superpower? How does he win and that translating to the NFL?
Yeah, DP, I'm going to go A trait. I'm going to go competitive nature, right? And that's a intangible, but I think it translates to the tangible, right? Meaning that the competitive nature, it's tied to two things. It's tied to one, his ability to go up and go get the football, right? To be able to get vertical, contest the well, go get the ball at his highest catch point, and come down with the football, right? Like he's a guy that when you talk about 50-50 balls, they become 70-30, right? Meaning that there's a higher chance that he's going to come down with the football, or the other side of that is probably going to hit the ground. I don't mind considering this guy a dog, right? When we use that terminology, that's what he is. And then the competitive nature also, I believe, goes to the run after catch ability, also known as rack, right? And how, to me, I think he fights through initial contact, right? He is truly a guy that when we use the phrase of turns into a running back with the football, his full 6'3", 6'4", 220-pound plus frame, you feel all of that, right? You feel it on film. You see it in how difficult it is for defenders to tackle him. So, like I said, both are attached to an intangible, but the intangible with the competitive nature, it translates to the physical. And those are the two things that when you bet your, you're betting a house on with Denzel Boston, it's because of those two things.
Yeah, 100%. One of the best contested catch 50-50 jump ball winners in this class. Hand-eye coordination, the aggressiveness attack the ball, but it's the timeliness on when he does so, right? I love guys who are patient and know when to elevate over DBs, understanding positioning. Hey, where's that guy's eyes? Is he face guarding you? Is he looking back for the ball, right? Late hands, things of that nature. Then the body control where he's playing through contact at the catch point, right? In the red zone on fade throws, which, I know Mina Kimes, doesn't like the fade, in the red zone fade that often because it's not a very productive route. But when you got guys that can go up and snatch the ball like a Denzel Boston, you can put it anywhere in his area and he can make a play on it. He used the full extension. He plucks the ball out with strong hands, almost 10-inch hands as well, which tracks what you see on tape. This dude snatches the ball. He does not drop the ball on film and everything. Keith, I think what I would say for me, I agree with everything what you said, the intangibles and the tangibles, the physicality. He absolutely runs through contact. Like, and I think he's not trying to get too ahead into the show outline, but the way he plays, you envision him in these West Coast system offenses with the crossing routes, the end breakers, especially against zones. I can't remember which game I was watching. It was Illinois, and they were like in the high red zone thing inside the 25-30, and he runs a over route, and I think it's Damon Williams is the quarterback. He hits him in stride, and what I really like is the fact that he's able to decel to catch the ball and then like run through the very next tackler that's in the way. Like the guy throws his shoulder into him. He just bounces off of it, spins off of it, absorbs the contact, and then he goes in. I think he ends up scoring on the play or getting at the 1-yard line. And it's like that type of strength and physicality. When we talk about prototypical X receivers, Keith, that's what we talk about. Those possessions. We want you to play like that. We want you to be a big boy, a big dude in the paint where if I got a mouse in the house, Yeah, I want the rock. I want the ball, right? But not only that, I think those crossing routes, like he is really good to me. Like we see a lot of zone coverage in the NFL, and when you talk about, I always watch how receivers read zones, and I talked about it before. Hey, if you're running the over route or crosser, read the linebackers. Like, you know what I mean? If those guys dropping, run it in front of them. If they step forward, run it behind them. He does a really good job of doing it, where you see some coverages where they got two off-ball backers. One drops, the other one triggers a little bit, like takes a step towards the line of scrimmage, and he just weaves in between the two and gets to the void. Finding the soft spots in zones, it sounds like an easy thing to the casuals and to the natural fans of the game, but guys, it's not that easy. Like you got to actually read what's going on post snap. I think he has high football IQ as well, Keith.
Yeah, I agree, DP. Another trait I'll get to, it's tied to the route running, but I think there's some explosiveness and conversions in and out of his breaks that I like. To where he's able to create some separation. And I mean, listen, we let's do the podcast, right? Let's go ahead and do it. I'm gonna say it. DP, there are elements of Denzel's Boston's game where I like more than I like Rome Odunze. Point blank, period. There are elements there to where I had concerns about Rome, and I don't have the same concerns about Denzel. And when I talk about the explosiveness in and out of breaks, DP, I think that he's an accelerate, decelerate guy with short area quickness kind of built in his 6'4", 220 frame. Yeah. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I think there's, the proper word, urgency. There's urgency throttling down.
I wrote down intentional. This is what I wrote
that's another good word. Intentional and urgency, right? To throttle down and then throttle back up, right? And if I'm comparing him with Rome Odunze, DP, I thought that Rome, he would have fell in the category of everything kind of happened at a similar speed, right? To where, and even when you talk about like those speed out type things, I think that everything happened at kind of like a same speed type of situation. Yeah. So I like the intentional part, and the urgency, I think is two words to describe Denzel's Boston route running.
No, I like that too. In the comparison to Rome, Rome was more of a true take. He had more take the top off type of speed than a Denzel to me, and to the point that you're making more of a one speed type of guy. Everything was kind of ran the same tempo where you'd like, I've watched him multiple times. There was multiple games I saw him do it. He ran a whip route, and I was like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, not at that size. Like, and it's not just a guy, I promise you, trying to paint the picture. It's not just like him running it's like that was a quick execution of the whip route. Like, you know what I mean?
Not doing it just to do it. Yeah, no, like we said, intentional. He was intentional.
It was he sunk the hips, like because in a sense it's like you're running a crosser and then you pivot back out. For those, for those just kind of trying to build the picture, for those who listen who don't know what the whip route is, and to watch him run that with intentionality and with urgency, and see him sink and then snap out of that, and I was just like, at his size, that's crazy. I'm like, all right, like he's got, like, to your point, Keith, he's got more short area quickness at the break point of his routes, and you see him be able to, I think he does a good job getting into blind spots too. So you're talking about when you're facing different coverages. If you're dealing with like press bail and they're side saddling out of there, I think he does a good job of being able to stem, take an inside angle, weave back outside to the blind spot, and then work back if he's running a comeback or a curl route, working back down. And now that corner, because once you get to the blind spot and a guy is side saddling, his head turns, and now he's tempted to kind of speed turn the zone turn out of there, and then you work back down and you create a lot of separation for yourself. So he's a guy that wins in different ways. But then again, I think I go back to my favorite trait. It has to be the physicality. It has to be the strength. At the end of the day, this is a grown man's league, right? You're going into the NFL. This is a physical game. It's not as physical as it was when we were younger, right? Like, it's not, you don't have to worry about the.
You don't have to worry about being on. Man, what was this segment on NFL Live? I think you got jacked up, right? Remember that?
Oh, so yeah. You don't got to worry about that. You know what I mean? They're going to throw a flag even if it's legal. So you don't even have to worry about that. But it's still a physical game, and guys who we see with the Puka Nakuas and the Jamar Chase, those guys who are physically just dominant and strong, that translates to the league, long as you know how to utilize it. And Denzel Boston knows how to utilize it.
Yep, I agree with DP. You know what we do, man. We talked about the positives, right? The pros of Denzel Boston, right? His ability to go up and go get the football, right? Be dominant, run after the catch ability, all those different things. But let's talk about the concerns, right? Because there's a reason why people are saying he's not wide receiver one. There's a reason why some people don't think he should go in the first round. Let's have the discussion. Let's talk about the concerns coming up next.
What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not just you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and clear swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to the Discord, our group chat with me, with Keith, and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonNFLDraft.supercast.com to join. The concerns for Denzel Boston out of Washington against 6'4", 212, 37-inch vert, 35, whatever, 32-inch arms, almost 10-inch hands. Keith, I think for me, the concern is what he didn't display the entire draft cycle. He did on-field workouts. He did leaps. He measured in. He refused to run. And that was the concern on tape, Keith.
Well, DP, I mean, listen, we just did the pro day conversation, right? With Malachi
Right.
Fields. And I forgot who the other wide receiver. Who's the other?
Carnell Tate.
Cornell Tate, right? We
Yep.
discussed that. And listen, maybe all I'm saying is he may know something we don't know, right? And
100%.
he may be protecting himself from that 40-yard dash.
Listen,
time.
if you know you put down 4 6s, I don't blame you, right? I had this conversation. I think I was on Twitter talking to our boy Ray Garvin, Ray GQ, shout out to Ray, and I was like, yeah, listen, if you're gonna Xavier Restrepo yourself and run a slow time,
that was another one I forgot about because he was a 4'8", right? And we were like,
yeah,
why did you? I wouldn't even worked out, right?
Yeah, he said he was injured and stuff like that. It was like, dude,
that was after the fact. Yeah, it was like he had a hamstring issue.
Yeah, nah, you should have just ran your routes, look crisp, look clean, and don't even touch it. And if that's the case for Denzel, hey, that's fine with me, brother. But I think that's going to be the biggest. Yeah, man. Hey, listen, draft season gets kind of wild out here, Keith. I think that's the biggest thing going to the NFL. Him playing on the boundary and playing outside the numbers, close to the sideline, and with the inability to truly vertically take the top off the defense, right? Stress guys. We talk about the strength. Well, you're going to deal with some stronger dudes in the NFL, right? You're going to deal with some really technically sound corners in the NFL. Like you always like to mention, the J.C. Horns, the Derek Stingleys, the Patrick Surtains. You're going to deal with guys that match up with you or get close enough to a height standpoint, right? The Quinyon Mitchells and all those guys that can run with you. And when guys that can run, you've seen it, Keith. When guys are not threatened by your speed, they try to suffocate the short and intermediate routes in the tree, right? So, yeah, you might be able to run different branches, but I'm about to cut some of these branches off as a corner and suffocate you to the point where you can only run when I'm going to give you space to run. So I think that's going to be a big thing, for him, Keith, is just be able to stretch vertically. Because if you can't run by guys, I think then it puts more onus and it makes him have to win the back shoulder fades more times than not. Now, he has the decel, right? And then he has the ability to stop and work back to the ball. So not that that's going to be a problem, but it's just hard to make a living off of that on the outside, game in and game out.
Yeah, and I think that's why the short area quickness is necessary, DP, because when we think about some of the wide receivers, right, they ran 40-yard dash times that let's say over 4.49, right? So 4.5 plus. I mean, I believe Devontae Adams was one. Puka Nakua was one, right? I mean, everybody always goes historically to Jerry Rice, right? But there's been multiple wide receivers to do that. But I think the beginning of the route, talking about your release package, right, and then your ability to accelerate becomes exponentially more important if you don't just have the flat out vertical speed to threaten. Just because DP that when you kind of got into it, I'm gonna get into it, and what I've seen from my time, right, watching this up close, that when corners aren't threatened by your vertical speed, they can play trail technique the entire time, right? They can be aggressive at the line of scrimmage and not even necessarily aggressive in having to shoot their hands and press jam you so much, but they can be aggressive in the sense of the fact of they can jump into your hip pocket immediately, right? And then once they jump into your hip pocket, they now can play every underneath route, right? With the understanding that there's probably if you're talking about a route tree, there's probably really 3 or 4 real vertical route trees, right? Where you're running and you're not coming back, right? You got the post, you got a corner, you got the go route, right? The other routes you can kind of play underneath because even if it's a dig, right? Boom, if I'm playing it underneath, I'm gonna be right there to be able to stop that. So a comeback, right? I'll be right there to be able to stop that. So that's why the speed or the quickness is important because he's going to have to be able to create separation at the break point if we don't believe that he has that 40-yard dash time to really separate. But I agree with you, DP. With the speed being a concern. I want to ask you, not having a 40-yard dash time on him, how does that affect the draft process for you?
I think, for teams who are like really, really high on like the RAS, the relative athletic score, like you look at a team like the Colts, maybe the Colts don't pick you because they don't have the full relative athletic score on you, right? There's certain teams who are really into that stuff, while other teams they trust the tape, they trust the miles per hour from the GPS that they get and stuff like that. Some teams are different. I still think he ends up being a top, 50 pick with ease, right? Like, and everything. I think for some teams it is going to be a question to where it's like, why didn't you run? Like, what did you run in your time, like in your training? What in your training were they clocking you at that you felt like, man, I ain't no way I'm running. Like, I'm good. I'm not going to expose myself to that, right? Like, it's like being on the stand and like, you know what? If I say something, I can incriminate myself. I plead the fifth, Your Honor. Like, I plead the fifth, right? That's really what that did. When I was actually texting the scout about that after Avion Terrell aggravated his hamstring on Monday during his first run of the 48ers Pro Day, and I was like, how how you feel about it? He said, man, I wasn't there, but Scout was telling me how some scouts could get frustrated because they took the time to go out to Clemson for the Pro Day, and then the Pro Day is over immediately. And there were some questions about his long speed that teams wanted answered. So I think that's, if anything, Keith, that's where it will kind of raise up. It's like you get into, draft day, you on the clock, or the team's about to be on the clock. You in that war room, you're like, all right, we got some receivers in striking range, and you might have somebody in the room like there's a Denzel Boston guy. And somebody's probably going to oppose him like, he didn't run. Like, you know what I mean? We value speed at the receiver position. He didn't run, and now it's a conversation they're trying to have in the midst of getting ready to be on the clock.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting, DP, and I thought about this. Either later this week or maybe early next week, there'd be an interesting conversation about this wide receiver class in totality, because if you think about it, who knows if we're going to get a 40-yard dash time on Jordan Tyson, right? Cornell Tate clocked in.
You're not. I think he already said he's doing just field drills.
Okay, all right. Because I heard that he was going to work out sometime middle of April or something 17th. Like that. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. So no 40-yard dash time on Jordan Tyson. Cornell Tate has been anywhere between a 4.47 and a 4.53. Right?
Some said 4.44.
Yeah.
Like,
Makai Lemon, right? Makai Lemon is that situation is up in the air.
4.53.
Yeah, somewhere in there, right? So, and I'm trying to see if I'm forgetting the wide receiver, but of the big three, and then you add Denzel Boston into that conversation. You add Malachi.
Casey Concepcion, we're not gonna have a 40 time on either.
Casey Concepcion, I knew it was somebody else missing. Malachi Fields running a 4.6, right? Like that. It's going to be interesting to see how these teams kind of decipher on what they're going to give and take with, and then also if these undersized wide receivers, the Mekhi Lemons, and I don't say undersized, right? But let's say average, right? Average
Yeah,
size
sub 6 foot.
5'11". Yeah. Mekhi Lemons, the KC Concepcions, how is that going to fare out when you have these bigger bodied guys that may have very similar testing measurables, right? Like, does it make Malachi Fields look not as bad if we don't have any testing on a Mekhi Lemon or a KC Concepcion, right? Like there's a lot.
Does it prop a Chris Brazzo up, Keith? He ran 4.37 at 6'4", 200 pounds. You know what I mean?
Right, 100%. Right. Do we get a Darius Hayward-Bay situation where it's like, okay, we just take him because he's fast, right? So
Omar Cooper Jr. running low 4.4s, which people, I think everybody was shocked by that number. People I think we said it.
Yep. I was definitely shocked.
I was too. I'm not gonna lie. I was too. I thought he was a 4-5 guy. So shout out to him for beating the expectations that we had on him. But like, I think that for teams that value speed and a specific specific way to win, that might be the deciding factor. Keith is like, oh, we got a 40 time on you. We don't have a 40 time on you.
Yeah, no, unless. Yeah, and like I said, I think we should flush that conversation out the closer we get to the draft. I think it'll be fun because I think these general managers are going to go through all of these different thought processes. But DP, coming up, man, is my favorite part of these scouting breakdowns is when we drop the draft grade and then we come up with an NFL comp. I'm excited to do it. Let's have some fun. Y'all make sure y'all stay tuned because draft grades plus NFL draft comps are coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you, our everydayers. Explaining the grade and giving our NFL comps. Keith, talk to me. When it comes on the Denzel Boston, 6'4", almost 215 pounds, out of Washington, the Husky star wide receiver. What's your grade and then what's your NFL comp for?
Oh, DP, just coming off our conversation, right? I so badly want to give him a first round grade. I do believe he will go in the first round of this draft, but I ended up on a high second. I gave him an 84.5. And it's funny because we just talked about this, right? What is the 40-yard dash time, right? And because it could, and listen, I pounded the table for Malachi Fields, right? And, as far as thinking he was a first rounder, I think he still is a first round talent, but I don't believe he'll go in the first round running a 4.6, right? And now understanding, I would have, and to be honest with you, DP, if I had to pick him to run a 4.6 or 4.4, I probably would have picked a 4.4 for Malachi Fields. And so knowing that with Denzel Boston is like, is it possible you can run a 4.6, right? Because then now I definitely have to look at you as a short to intermediate threat in a sense. Not fully understanding and having to go off of the film. So I gave him an 84.5, which is, is a half a point away from a first rounder. I like this young man a lot, DP. I think he's supremely talented. I think he's skilled. I think he's gifted. I will go as far as to say people discuss him, but I still think he's slightly overlooked. And I constantly compare it to the Rome Odunze situation. Listen, and that's why we always say context matters, right? When Rome played with Washington, you had Michael Penix, right? And they made it to the national championship, right? So there was a spotlight that everybody was looking at them, right? Like there's just different things that were going on with the Washington football program at that time versus right now, right? And so I look at it in that context and I say that I think that they're in the same bucket of talent, right? And that's whether you believe that they're both top 10 picks or back into the first round guys, right? But I think they're comparable, a lot more comparable than what people are saying as far as wide receiver prospects, and obviously the height, weight measurements are very similar. So I gave him an 84.5.
Yeah, man, I gave him a 78.5, Keith. So for our scale, that's the top of the second round pick, just right along with you. I think he's a guy that, newsflash, we're doing our big board, our top 50 tomorrow. We have him at 33. So he's right outside of the top 32 picks of the first round. And I think this is a guy that, like you talk about, the strength, the ball skills, the short area quickness, from a route standpoint and everything. I think, as we talked about, the concerns of speed. I think you turn on the Michigan tape, that's when you see that the lack of speed threat really kind of like hinder him, where I think Michigan had bigger corners. So those guys got up on him and was able to kind of crowd him, and suffocate him early in the stem, early in the rep at the line of scrimmage. And they were right in his hip pocket a lot of times, like you said, trail technique, just right in his hip pocket, making things difficult. And it's different. Like, you're talking about having, one of these smaller nickels. Like if he's working down into the nickel, you get one of these smaller nickels on it. Like, okay, you can be in the hip pocket. I don't care. I'm still throwing it to Denzel Boston because you're 5'10", he's 6'4". I'm putting it up where only he can go get it. But when you're dealing with a guy that's 6'1", 6'2", and it has the requisite arm length and everything else, he can kind of squeeze you to the sideline, things of that nature. My comp for him, Keith, is I think he reminds me of Michael Pittman. Is it Michael Pittman Jr., who went from the Colts to the Steelers, which is crazy because Boston, this whole draft cycle, everybody who's doing mocks was putting Denzel Boston to the Steelers, and then the Steelers go and get Michael Pittman Jr. I don't think they go get a Denzel Boston now because that's redundant skill sets. But I think the same way we saw him win is the same way that I could see Denzel Boston win. Possession receiver. I think he gives you more. Not even think he gives you more, in my opinion, after the catch. Quicker, more fluid, quicker footed, and just quicker mover. Where Pittman was a little bit more labored, in my opinion, from an athletic standpoint. I don't even know if I didn't look. I don't even know if we have an actual 40 time on Michael Pittman. We might, but I didn't look it up. But that's the comp I have for him, Keith. While we got some time, teams. When you think about his skill set, what are some teams you think make sense?
Yeah, let me do this because I didn't throw out comps. I forgot to throw.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I forgot to throw out a couple comps. I like the Michael Pittman Jr. one. I thought of that one. And two ceiling guys, right? Like peak ceiling guys, and both had subpar 40-yard dashes as far as that 4.4 threshold. One was Dez Bryant, and Dez Bryant was an excellent go up and get it guy, right? Like you're talking about pure dog, pure mentality, to where people remember coming out of Oklahoma State, they were like, I think he ran a 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. And people were like, should he be a first round XYZ? And that's why he fell, I think, to pick 21, right? What the Steelers are picking this year. I think that's where he fell to. And then the other guy, which I think is a easy comp that we've seen, you're talking about ceiling, right? So there's Bryant ceiling guy. Mike Evans, right? Obviously, I believe he was another. Did he run a 4.5? I know it was a high 4.4 or 4.5 40-yard dash time. Bigger body guy, right? That just understood how to win, right? How many times we gonna see this big 6'4", 6'5" frame with a rocker step at the top, right? With a double move against the safety, finding a way to free himself, but also when you talked about that fade ball, right? He's a wide receiver you trust to do it, right? Like, and the thing is, the fade ball is not meant for everybody, and I think that was the issue with the NFL. They started to do it to everybody, right? It's not meant for everybody. It's meant for the Mike Evans. It's meant for the Dez Bryants, right? It's meant for wide receivers of that ilk. So that was my two ceilings, but I feel comfortable with saying, okay, if it doesn't happen, I get Michael Pittman Jr. at the least, right? Something like somewhere in that ballpark, in that category. But you were talking NFL teams. That could be interesting, DP, because we talking first round or second round? What are you thinking? Because I think second round there's a bunch of teams, but
there's a lot. There's a couple.
If we keep it to the first round, I thought about Buffalo, right? With them potentially, I know what they have, DJ Moore, Keon Coleman. You just don't know what the Keon Coleman situation is, but I also don't know how comfortable they are with drafting another 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver with down the field speed concerns, right?
Right.
How they feel about that. Obviously, Miami sits at 30, right? Could be a potential option. For me, I'm gonna ask for you. Would New England be done to you? Do you think with them signing Romeo Doubs and then adding that to the rest of this wide receiver core, do you think they should be done with wide receivers?
No, absolutely not. No, I definitely don't think they should. I think you should absolutely be aggressive. And if there's a guy that fits with your quarterback and your system, that go get him. And you know what I mean? Whether it's at 31, later on day 2, I think they absolutely should, Keith. I was looking through just the draft. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah, go ahead.
Based off of our past show, is that when I can't remember when it was a couple of days ago, right? The show we did when we did the trades, right?
Yeah.
Would you having the opportunity to draft Denzel Boston make you comfortable enough to move on from AJ Brown?
Oh, you're talking about for the Eagles.
For the Eagles.
I mean, possibly. Because he wins in a similar way. He gives you that power, that punch. Of course, AJ is just a different build, so he's a different strength and everything. But in terms of just you talking about locker room presence, the health of the locker room, just the ease that it'll bring to your quarterback from hey, you don't have a guy screaming like I'm open and stuff like we always hear all the top wide receivers say that stuff and everything, but it's got to everything just has to mesh when you're winning and you're doing that right, it's all good. But when the offense isn't flowing well and stuff like that, things can get disjointed. So I think the Eagles, who I believe that it's going to be a draft day trade that the Eagles eventually that's when it happens. Round 1, we get the trade during the draft. We get the trade of AJ Brown from the Philadelphia. That's just my personal opinion, Keith. 2 teams that came to mind to me, and I think both of them in round 2. The Baltimore Ravens are number 1. They had the 14th pick, but I would for them, I would love for them to get Venga Ione from Penn State. Right now, a lot of scouts have him as the best pure offensive lineman in this class. If you can get him at 14 and really sure up that offensive line for Lamar, Derrick Henry, and everything, that's great. And then you get Denzel Boston to be the X receiver to Zay Flowers, Z slot. Then you let Rashad Bateman play, fall, get in where you fit in type situation. I like that. And then the other team, Keith, is I really like the Raiders at 36. Keith, I love the Raiders at 36 because of the Clint Kubiak, bringing in how he runs things and how that offense, and I talked about that West Coast style offense. You're getting those receivers, the JSNs, the Puka Nacuas, the Juwan Jennings, the Brandon Ayuk, all those guys going to San Fran. You're getting those guys running crossing routes a lot. Play action, you get crossing. You get some what is it, flood concept where guys working from backside, stuff like that. Get the play action, back foot hit, so you're on the naked boot. You get that big target in the middle of the field or flowing with you. You make the throw and let him be that big body receiver. I think he'll pair well with what they have. They have Deontay Thornton, but he only caught 10 passes. Jack Besh only caught 20. Brock Bowers was injured. Trey Tucker is the speed guy. You know what I mean? I think you bring in a guy like Denzel Boston paired with and we saw what Fernando Mendoza did with Elijah Surratt, right? We saw, and this is a bigger, more physical version of that, right? So I think he's probably has a little bit more, even though he's big, I think he's got a little bit more short area quickness than Elijah Surratt has in terms of changing direction and things like that. So I think those 2 teams make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and off of the conversation of NFL offenses, that's why I was going to mention the 49ers too. Sitting there, pick 27, 28, right?
That's a very solid spot in that round 1.
Yeah, yep. I can see them go ahead and swing for the fences with that one. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, we're dropping our top 50 big board, going over our top 50 prospects right now as we enter. We're in it, guys. It is draft month, so we're only a couple weeks away from the NFL draft kicking off. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.